As I've gotten older, I've matured as well. When I was in my 20s and I had ulcerative colitis, I thought, why me? Why do I have to deal with this? But now it's like, oh, wow, I was given that because now I can help someone else. And I feel I have more empathy, I have more compassion towards others. If I didn't have this, would I be that kind of person? I don't know. But it has made me, in hindsight, I feel like a better person in the end.
Welcome back to Talking Shit, presented by Colitis Unfiltered. My name is Frank Tabering, and on this podcast, we talk everything IBD. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Janelle, who was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis at age 25 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So Janelle, ulcerative colitis, age 25. Let's go back to the beginning, to where it all started, even before the diagnosis. Tell me a little bit about your first symptoms, and also when you noticed that something was just off, something was wrong, something prompted you to seek medical help.
Yes, so around the age of 23, 2 years before my diagnosis, I started seeing some really weird things coming in when I would defecate. It was like white pieces of something. I just didn't know what it was. I thought it was really weird, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm lactose intolerant. I was having some problems with my dairy, so I cut out all lactose. Still was having issues. Still was seeing this white discharge coming out in my bowel movements. Fast forward a year, I now started seeing blood coming out of with my feces, and it kind of scared me. I went to go see my doctor. She referred me to a gastroenterologist. When I called them, they told me that I wouldn't be able to come in for 6 months because I was a new patient. And I said, I don't think I have 6 months, because at that point, I thought I was having cancer. Who bleeds from their rectum? I'm 25 years old. I don't know much. I told them I don't think I have that long, and I told the person who I was talking to my symptoms, and she said, you either have Crohn's or colitis. She assigned me an emergency colonoscopy, so I had to do the prep that day. Let my work know, like, I'm gonna be out tomorrow. I have a procedure tomorrow. When I woke up, I was still really drowsy, and the doctor said, yes, you have ulcerative colitis. And I just looked at him like, I don't know. He's speaking another language to me. I don't know what he's talking about. They put me on medication. I went on Azicol right away. Did I see improvements? No. I wasn't bleeding. I wasn't getting the mucus discharge. That's what they ended up finding, that white substance that was coming out, that discharge. It was mucus, because my body was trying to heal itself and heal the wounds. My white cells would just attack it. There were times I went in remission. I have some very embarrassing moments. I'm trying to even get to work sometimes, and you'd have an accident. But the best thing I can tell people is have an emergency kit with you all the time. Here in America, we drive a lot instead of using public transportation. So in my car, I would have a bin that included like a flour container, like something that you would hold like flour or sugar in. And I would put a doggy bag in it and then use that and put that underneath my bum. And it would collect in the dog bag, and I could just throw out the doggy bag. I also brought like extra clothes, toilet paper, wet wipes, like actual wipes. So if any feces gets on your hand, you could clean it up. This is what I dealt with for nearly 20 years. And I got to the point where one of my colonoscopies, they said that I had ulcers now all the way. Colitis starts in your rectum. So that's where mine definitely began. And it started going up, but it stayed it stayed like that for years. It stayed like that for like 10, 15 years. And then all of a sudden, one day, my body was like, I'm not going to fight this anymore. I'm done. And it just, all the ulcers went all the way. They weren't able to see in the colonoscopy if it was actually going into the small intestine. They said they wouldn't know unless the surgeon looked at it. They were all, everybody I met with was like, you don't want to get rid of your colon. You want to keep it. And I said, you know what? I've suffered so much and in so much pain um, that I don't want it anymore. I researched, I met with other people who had an ostomy bag, and I was like, they have their life back. I think I could do this. So I told the surgeon, I was very clear with him. I want this. I want this ileostomy bag and I want it to be permanent. And he was like, no, no, you might want a J pouch. Well, when I researched the J pouch, all they do is they take their small intestine and they sew it into the rectum. Well, there I'd have my rectum still, which has ulcerative colitis in it. I was like, I'm good at, and the muscles are gone back there. Like I would just go constantly. So it was, no, that was not, I said no to the J pouch. And I told him, I was like, please remove my rectum. It's of no use. And he said, no, no, we may keep it. It'll heal on its own. And I said, no, it won't. I know my body. I know ulcerative colitis. It doesn't heal on its own. And even if I have that little bit of rectum left, it's going to be a problem. So I had my surgery. I woke up and this is really funny story. As I get up out of my surgery, my surgeon had told me I was so tiny and small at that time. He was like, he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to go in laparoscopically into tiny little incisions or if he was going to have to cut my stomach all the way down. So when I got up out of it, I was like, open up my gown, open up my gown. I want to see, how it looks. And my husband is standing next to me on the bed, next to me in the hospital bed, and we're opening this up, and I see little incisions, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he actually did little incisions." But you have a clear bag, and the clear bag is showing black, red, just horrible, right? My husband is standing there, and he sees this, and he faints. And I'm like, I'm supposed to be treated by the nurses right now, and now they're taking care of my husband. So, there's little funny things that happen along this journey, but I wouldn't change anything because it's made me who I am today. It's made me strong. It's made me be an advocate for myself. And now that I have my ostomy bag, I'm back to being myself, actually better than I was before. I'm never doubling over in pain. I'm never looking every time I enter a store or someplace I go, where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? Because you always had to plan. You never knew when the flare would happen. So now I can just actually relax and enjoy my life and enjoy going to places without having to run for the bathroom. And it's great because I can travel and I don't have to stop as much to, have a bowel movement because it's just happening all the time.
Wow. So yeah, that's so. Thank you for that summary. There's a lot of to dissect here. So I'm going to go back a little bit because there's something interesting that you said. You were diagnosed. You were put on ASACOL for a while, and then you said there's a period of almost 20 years, right? During those 20 years, did you stay on just Asacol? How did you manage? Were you constantly flaring? Were you sporadically flaring? How bad were the flares? Because 20 years is a long period, before getting to the point to say, oh wow, now all of a sudden like I cannot take it anymore. So maybe talk a little bit about those managing the disease for 20 years and what that was like for you.
Come to think of it, most of the time it's been a blur. Thank God for that, right? But for the most part, I did stay on Asacol. They did move me to some other types of medications, not remembering some of the names, but they would make me feel really sick, where I felt like I had the flu. So we wouldn't stay on those. I would just stay on the Azicol. There were times that I would flare up more because we found out that I also had irritable bowel syndrome. With that, any stressors, anything like that is gonna aggravate it as well. So there were times that I would also go on corticosteroids, is like a prednisone or budesonide. I ballooned up really bad within my face. I was constantly irritable, wanting food all the time, but I looked into a lot of holistic things of changing my diet, cutting out seed oils, cutting out carbohydrates, cutting out sugar. Sugar causes a lot of inflammation in your body. So does seed oils. So learning that along my journey, it's really difficult in the US to get around these things. So I've ended up having to learn how to cook my own food. So diet definitely helped. I did a lot of meditations as well to help calm my stress that I had in my life and just working with those medications. And there's times that I actually had remission for 3 years, had no symptoms. I was having normal bowel movements. Those were the most amazing times. But the other times when I'd flare up, it would get pretty bad.
Obviously, when you have periods of remission, you think, okay, right, the disease is under control, and yeah, you might flare up every now and then. But as you got closer to a period of it getting worse and worse, so much so that you chose surgery, was there never a time that, your doctors, your GI mentioned biologics to try and save the day?
So that was offered to me in the middle of my journey, but at that time it was Remicade and Humira.
Remicade, yeah. Yep,
Um,
exactly. The two early ones, yeah.
the 2 is early ones, and I needed to go on, like, a trial basis. They weren't just, like, giving it out,
Mm,
back then, and that was around, like, the 2010s. Then, like, as I was getting closer to the end of my journey of removing it towards the surgery, then I started seeing more biologics coming out, and at that time, they were offering them, but I said, I feel like I felt like my colon was at its end of life, that I should have had those earlier in my journey. Now I was at the point where it's like it's irreversible because it was so much, the whole colon was so damaged with ulcers.
did the choice to not go the biological road then, did that rest mostly on you? Or like, did the doctor say, hey, maybe let's try him? And you just said, listen, I know my body, no thank you. And also, if that was the case, or even if it wasn't the case, if you're looking back, do you ever regret not trying them out?
I just didn't get the opportunity in my journey. So at the beginning, it was Humira, Remicade, and I was seriously looking into those because I was put into the trial, but they never called me to try it. So it wasn't just prescribed. I don't understand why, like how other people got it prescribed, but my doctor wouldn't prescribe it. And then again, later in my journey, they offered it again. But then that was when I said, no, I don't think that that's going to work either. Just because I was getting fed up being a guinea pig with medications not working.
Sure. Yeah, of course. At one point, it's very discouraging. So you sort of lose the trust
Yeah.
in science if it really doesn't work anymore. Now, obviously, you making the decision to have your intestines removed, that meant that you were at a stage where you just couldn't take it anymore, right? So
Yes.
obviously, your condition must have severely degraded. How did you deal with that mentally? Sort of, first of all, it getting worse all of a sudden after having years of remission and a couple of flares, but obviously at one point it really started to go bad. How did you deal with that mentally, seeing your body basically continuing to turn against you to the point that you're the one who has to make a decision and say, I want this thing out of me?
That mental health journey was very tough. I will not lie about that. There were times that I've wanted to take my own life just because I was sick of tired of dealing with the pain. dealing with medications that didn't work, dealing with doctors who just didn't understand it as much as you would think they would. Towards the end of my journey, I think I got better about it because I was like, "This is my life. This is what I've been dealt with. These are the cards I've been dealt," right? How can I make the best of these moments? That's when I started standing up for myself more and becoming more of an advocate for myself and really researching things. I mean, now the internet is blown up with so much information that I was able to do a lot of research on my own, especially social media helped me as well with people sharing their stories and going, "Hey, I'm dealing with the same thing." That helped me along going, "Hey, I'm not alone in this." And I started connecting with people to help get me through it because when you're around your own family and friends, if they don't have it, they don't understand. They may be empathetic, but they don't fully grasp the day in, day out of what you actually deal with. And so when you actually talk to someone that actually has dealt with it, they're it feels like, "Oh my gosh, I'm home. I have someone now that gets it." You're not alone.
For sure. It's interesting that you say this because you would expect that family and close friends are really your main support system. And of course, they can be in many ways as you struggle with IBD. But I feel the same way. It's like for us, it's pretty obvious what's going on. IBD is referred to as an invisible illness for a reason, but then, especially close family members or even partners, they do see us suffer to a certain extent, right? Whether it's fatigue, whether it's like just hiding out in the bathroom or just wanting to sort of isolate ourselves and dealing with the pain in silence. But in your case, did you try to explain this to your close family members or I don't know, to your partner or husband? I don't know if that was a husband at that point. And
Yes.
what and how did you try and communicate? How did you try to explain it? Because a lot of people seem to struggle to like sort of find the right way to share what we're going through with loved ones.
Yeah, and this is a funny story, I'll share with you because I felt like no matter what I said, it wouldn't mm, come to like, it didn't hold with people, like, they didn't really understand or the grasp, the pain. I'm more of a person who I think rather than talk about it, I'll have to show it. Right? So, do I need to prove this to you? Fine. I will put myself in pain to prove to you that I have this problem. So, my mother-in-law decided she's gonna make a chili, and she used 6 different beans in it. I can't have that much fiber, as I was explaining before. So, I told her, "I can't eat your chili." She's like, "Oh, it'll be fine, Janelle. You can have this. It'll be fine." And I said, "You know what? You're right. It will be fine." Knowing it wouldn't, right? But I was like, I'm at the point now where I just wanna prove to her that it's not. Within an hour after eating the chili was good, by the way, but within an hour, I was running to the bathroom. I was actually crying a little bit in pain, and my mother-in-law came to me and said, "I am so sorry. I now understand what you're going through." They don't get that until they actually physically see it, and that's hard, but I'm that kind of, strong-willed mind person who's like, "Alright, fine, let's just go do this. I'll prove it to you."
You gave them a front row seat
I sure
to
did, and they
the pain and
smelled it too.
suffering. Yeah. So I mean, it's let me say that's probably a quite
Yes,
unconventional way of
yes,
explaining what you're going through.
right,
But this is interesting because I can tell that you have your own particular sense of humor, right?
yes,
And clearly, we try to we use our sense of humor when we feel good, but sometimes, our sense of humor then also helps us through some of the times when we feel bad. Now, talking or going back to the surgery, you had the story, that you joked about, like, hey, your husband was the one fainting, and nurses took care of him and stuff. So did you apply this mental approach, like this sort of sense of humor as well, preparing for surgery, going through surgery, or were you scared? Were you not scared?
Oh gosh, all of those, yes. Humor is one of the things that has gotten me through all of this. The poop jokes just get me through that because there's a lot that you can just joke about. I mean, even your podcast is like, let's just talk about shit, right? I mean, this is what we deal with, right? So, was I scared? Absolutely. You have a 50-50 shot of making it or not making it. But I felt comfortable knowing that I was in good hands, and if, things were to not go right, well, then that was my time. When I woke up, I mean, we were just laughing, a lot, especially when it came to my husband, and I actually had to calm myself from laughing because it was painful, I just had all this, like, I've just been stabbed with tons of stuff going on in my abdomen, and, so and as I went on my journey after the surgery, they come in, they want you to walk right away to, like, get your blood flowing, it makes you heal faster. I was out there every day, 3 times a day, walking the halls, and I had a nurse with me, and I was like, I would tell her, I'm like, "I wanna go again for a walk," and she's like, "Wow, you're really pushing yourself," and I said, "No, it's because I wanna heal, I wanna get better, I wanna start my life," and we would make jokes, as we would walk. I'm not saying I was walking really fast, but, you know, my surgeon came in and he told me, "Janelle, you are one of my stellar patients that I've ever had." He's like, "You're out there walking, you take everything I tell you, you do it." And I said, "Yeah, this is my body, this is my health. If I don't do this, I will be miserable just laying in a bed all day becoming a vegetable." And going back to that surgery, he didn't take out my rectum, my first surgery, when he did the ileostomy. So, as I had mentioned, I have colitis, it starts in your rectum. Guess what? I had issues 6 months after my ileostomy. I started having a lot of water and mucus. I had 2 inches back there, 2 inches. And I was having the muscle spasms, like you have to go. You know how painful that is when you're still trying to recover from surgery? So I actually had to go back to the surgeon and I told him, I was like, "I told you to take out my rectum." And he was like, "Yes, you were right." So after that surgery, when I woke up, now I don't have a rectum. I don't fart. I You know, I don't have to worry about anything back there. It's so wonderful. So, I have to joke around, and so my surgeon comes in and he's like, "How you doing? How you feeling today?" And I was like, "I have to really ask you a serious question. Does this mean I can't do anal beads anymore?" And he's just sit there with a straight face because 'cause he's gotta be professional, and he goes, "No, Janelle, you don't have a butthole anymore." And I was like, I'm just trying to make him laugh, because I'm trying to get through this with making jokes. There's times that I would joke around with people at work, that I got a new office desk chair for my job, and I was like, "It's so great because there's no farts on it, I don't fart anymore." And then I'll tell him, "Oh, but then my husband sat on it, and then he farted on it. Now it's ruined." But you have to make jokes about some of these things because it gets you through it. Before, I would be sitting on the toilet for hours just hoping something would pass because it felt like I either dealt with diarrhea or constipation with colitis. It was always every day was different with colitis. I never knew what I was getting. Now it's just I can live my life again. Yes, it might be an inconvenience at first that you always have to empty this bag, but your life could be so much more worse if you didn't have that. Like, if you had a digestive disease that caused you to go to the bathroom constantly with a lot of pain, it caused you fatigue, it takes away your malnutrition of your food at times. You're dealing with anemia, just so many different things that you're dealing with when you have ulcerative colitis that you don't have to deal with when you have an ostomy anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm really happy to hear that humor served you well and that you bring humor into your advocacy as well, right? And your awareness. So keep doing that because it's a strength. And not everybody has the strength to relate on something like humor to get them through an ordeal like this one. So you touched as we segue into the present and slowly inch towards the closing and look into the future as well. You mentioned it yourself. You talked about how you are today. Seems to be going relatively well. I can deduct for sure that you have your life back. But just very bluntly, do you consider yourself cured?
I've asked that to my doctor actually, because now that I have no colon or a rectum, I don't have colitis. However, it is an autoimmune disease. Because I had colitis for over 10 years, once you have an autoimmune disease for over 10 years, you start getting other autoimmune diseases. So, yes, my ulcerative colitis journey is over, but it's not over as far as autoimmune diseases. I now have other autoimmune diseases that I deal with.
How are you dealing with those? Let's say if we want to compare, I'm assuming you're still better off than you were before.
Oh,
How
absolutely.
how are you feeling just on a general basis then today?
Yeah, so as I've gotten older, I've matured as well. When I was in my 20s and I had ulcerative colitis, I thought, "Why me? Why do I have to deal with this?" But now it's like, "Oh, wow, I was given that because now I can help someone else." And I feel I have more empathy, I have more compassion towards others. If I didn't have this, would I be that kind of person? I don't know. But it has made me in hindsight, I feel like a better person in the end because I'm I never wanted to be a helpful person before, and now I want to be helpful because I had those people who helped me on my journey. I wanna help someone else on their journey now, and it's gonna be a bumpy road, I'm not gonna lie, but speak up for yourself, be an advocate for yourself because the only one who knows your body the best is you. And if you don't like what your doctor is saying, see another doctor if you can, because you can get different opinions from different doctors.
Well, you just answered about three questions in one answer, so which is really great. You know what that means? I can go straight to my next one.
Yes, yeah.
But thank you for sharing that. Yes, absolutely. I was going to ask you how it changed you as a person. You certainly addressed that, and I always do like to ask, what kind of advice or word of advice you have for people who are going through something similar. Something else that I think a lot of people struggle with, especially when it comes to surgery, living with an ostomy, is body image. How has colitis and also your surgery affected your body image?
Yeah, there were times I've always felt dirty, when you poop your pants as an adult and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm a toddler and I I have to take care of this." Like you start to degrade yourself like, "Oh man, like my whole pants are ruined." I was always thinner, so I felt like I was okay with who way I looked, but I always felt that I was too thin. So when I would actually put on a little weight, I would get really, really excited, and I was like, "I'm finally being healthy, I'm finally being healthy." I remember dancing around sometimes like that when I put on 2 pounds. But as my journey now having an ostomy, I think I'm even sexier now because I don't have anything holding me back, and I have this cool little bag on my belly that nobody else has. It's kind of like another accessory that no one sees, I love to accessorize with glasses and fun cool things, but at the same time, I look at it as like, this is my lifesaver, and I think I look sexy having a little ostomy bag and, not using the clear one, obviously. But my husband doesn't see it when we're together. He doesn't say anything to me like, uh, "Oh, that's disgusting," or, he doesn't see it. He's like, "I see
He
you."
doesn't he doesn't faint anymore.
No, no, he doesn't faint. No. Oh, yeah. But, he's gotten used to it, and our intimacy has not changed at all because of that, because he loves me. And when you're out there, if you're single and you have an ostomy and you're feeling insecure about yourself, you will find somebody who's not gonna find that that's gross or disgusting. They're gonna love you, and they're just gonna go, "Oh, well, that's just something that's a part of you." It's like as if we didn't have a leg, you'd have to have a prosthesis. So you just have to there are people who don't look at that as a problem. They just don't. Yeah, it's all about your own mind and keeping yourself strong-willed. I found that easier in later on in my life as I've matured, and also I should mention that I also did seek a lot of therapy throughout this journey as well.
Very important. Very important, and something that I feel is often bypassed almost, especially with IBD. I mean, I was lucky enough that my specialist in the US when I was out in LA also offered me to go see a therapist, actually a therapist specializing in digestive diseases. And I mean, think about that, a specialist, a therapist specializing in IBD. That's fantastic to have people like this. Again, I mean, it's one thing to be seen by a therapist and work with your therapist to work to whatever you're dealing with. But again, to have somebody really focusing on IBD and everything that's associated with it, all these insecurities, the fears, the embarrassment,
Yes.
it's important. And I think we don't stress this enough that,
Yes.
even though you might be wanting to isolate yourself in the beginning, even though you might be embarrassed, therapy can go a long ways. I mean, I can certainly speak to that. You can speak to that, I'm sure,
Yes.
because the way you're paying to me, you're open. You are not
Yes.
embarrassed at all.
No.
So don't forget about that aspect as well. And when it comes to the mental health,
You will deal with embarrassing moments dealing with ulcerative colitis or even Crohn's, I'm sure. I can only tell you from my experience, but there were one time that I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a while, and the commute was horrendous. There would be times I'd be in the car for up to 2 hours just trying to get through traffic. There was one time that I really had to go and I wasn't near a bathroom. And I got to my place of business and I parked in the parking structure and I knew I would never make it to the bathroom. I was like, I'm never gonna make it. I'm not gonna make it. So I had brought my lunch in a grocery bag, that you would get. And I had a bunch of napkins in my car console just because of spills or whatever. I always love to have napkins around. Well, I ended up using those to defecate on, and then ended up carrying my lunch into work because I had to dump all of that into the grocery bag. I mean, these are the moments that you're, like, so embarrassed about, but I'm like, "Did anyone notice?" No, there was nobody around, and I just threw it in the garbage. And I went on about my day. And it's just like you
of
would be
course,
super embarrassed, and there's times that I've had, feces on the back of my pants, and someone's noticed, and they're like, "Did you sit in chocolate?" "No, I didn't." So those are those embarrassing moments, but when you actually share with people like, "Oh, I actually have a problem," even if they don't understand, they usually were like, "Oh, okay." Like, I probably shouldn't have said anything or, I didn't wanna make them feel bad. But, yeah, it's those moments that you have to look back. At the time, it's embarrassing and, yeah, your face is gonna get red and you're gonna be embarrassed and you hope nobody sees you, but at the end, when you look back, you're like, "Man, I got through that moment and I did it really with my head held high," right? As much as it can be when you're dealing with poop.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think sometimes going through embarrassing experiences will help us mature, will help us then eventually to kind of get rid of that embarrassment and accept what we're dealing with because we don't really have, like you said, a choice, right?
Right.
So I always like to end on a positive note, and I think your story that you just mentioned and the outcome of it, at least, is definitely optimistic, right? And filled with hope. So I have a final question for you, and that one is if you could go back in time, back to that 25-year-old self, what would you tell that person? And I know that you probably would, whatever you would say, you would probably say it with humor, having to gotten to know you a little bit. But what would be your message to yourself at age 25?
I think the first thing I would do is hug myself and tell myself everything's going to be okay and that I'm going to get through it and it's going to make me become stronger and that the journey is going to be a bit bumpy and a a bit shitty, actually. Literally. But, you know, eh, I would warn myself about some of the things that I'm gonna deal with so that I don't fall into those mental lows that I did get at the beginning and sometimes throughout the journey where I felt like suicide might be better. And I'm glad that I never went through with that because I did contact suicide hotline and they did get me through it. So all of the people that you talk to there are volunteers. So they are the most wonderful volunteers I'd ever met. Just getting you through your struggle and trying to understand what you're going through and making you feel like you're a person. Because that's where I didn't feel like it throughout this journey. Sometimes I was like, what is happening to me? I don't feel like a person. But at the end of this whole thing is I wouldn't change anything about anything because it's what I knew. Like if I were diagnosed now, I would probably treat it a lot differently because of all the knowledge that's out there. But I didn't know a lot of that stuff back then. I got a lot of books, but they only tell you so much. They don't talk to you about the mental health part of all of this as well. And dealing with relationships as well and how to explain this to people so that they understand and not make you feel like you're, because they don't see it, they may think you're a hypochondriac. And that's not the case. And that's why, I shared earlier that sometimes you just have to prove it to people if that's what it takes. But I don't recommend that. Don't recommend that.
No, no. And yet you did prove it.
I
And the most
did,
important
yes.
thing, and exactly, and the most important thing is that you actually got through it, right? You found your way, and you found yourself. You got your life back, and I think
Yes.
that's what matters most. And and if you achieve that with the help of humor, then so be it, right? More power to you. So, Janelle, don't lose that humor for sure, because I think it's very inspiring. First of all, it helped you, and I think it's helping other people as well. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to open up about your story today. Very inspiring. And I'm going to leave you with nothing but the best. I hope that you
Thanks.
continue to manage whatever sort of other autoimmune diseases you're struggling with and that it's going well. And wishing nothing but the best for the future.
Thanks, Frank. And thanks so much for having me and hope that my journey can help someone else through theirs.
That's it for today's episode of Talking Shit, presented by Colitis Unfiltered. I'm Frank Tabering, and if this hit home or hit your gut, do us a favor, subscribe to the show, and follow us at Colitis Unfiltered on YouTube, Substack, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Reddit. We'll see you soon for more inspiring stories from the bathroom floor.